Welcome back to another episode of the NordSearch podcast. So today we're going to talk about probably the hottest power market in the world, which is Japan. I'm sure you'd agree. And I am delighted to be joined today by a true expert in the Japanese power market. So Bob Takai, thank you for joining me today, CEO of the Japanese power market EEX. So, Bob, welcome to the podcast and thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Patrick, and hello everyone from Tokyo.
I believe it's very hot at the moment in Tokyo.
It's crazy. It's dangerously hot in Tokyo.
Yeah, I've heard that. But look, Bob, it's fantastic to have you on. You, I'm sure, are known to many, but there'll be others that don't know much about the Japanese power market today and perhaps have not had the pleasure of speaking to you before. So it'd be amazing if you could give us an overview into your amazing career. You've told me, and I found it fascinating, and then leading into what you're responsible for as well today.
Okay. So my name is Bob Takai. I'm in charge of EEX Japan KK, which is a legal entity of the European Energy Exchange in Germany. And I have spent all my career in somehow related to a commodities industry. I started my career in 1980. So I've been in the business for 45 years. And let me just go through what I have done in my career. So 1980, I graduated from Kobe University and joined the company called Sumitomo Corporation, which is one of the biggest Japanese trading house. And my first job was, I was a gold trader. The gold trader at the Japanese trading firm. The reason why I was assigned the gold trading is because Japan liberalized the gold market in the late 70s. And the market started in 1982, and there was a big demand in gold in the 80s. So gold is a big business for the trading house. So I spent almost 15, 20 years in the precious metals market in Tokyo and also in London. I spent a total of 7 years in London, working in the precious metals market as well as base metals market. London Metal Exchange, so stuff like copper and aluminium and zinc and etc. So basically, I covered almost all metals, precious and also base metals, in the 80s and also in the 90s. In the late 90s, there was a liberalization of the petroleum market in Japan. So I started to trade petroleum products such as gasoline and kerosene. And at that time, the Tokyo Commodity Exchange started to trade the futures market. So I traded petroleum products in addition to the metals. So my career started from the metals and moved to the energy side, petroleum products, and then crude oil. And then in the 2000, I started to trade financial instruments such as equities, foreign exchange, stuff like that. And then I moved on to the physical energy business, which is upstream E&P, which is oil and gas, underground, including the shale gas and shale oil development in the United States. So I did that, and then I also did the LNG trading business from the States. So I did the metals, I did the energy in both financials and also physicals. And then the last part of my career, I spent in the government affairs. And I stayed in Washington, D.C. when the Trump was the president in the first administration from 2018 to 2020. So that's all my career I spent in the trading company. And then from 2020, I joined the European Energy Exchange, which lead my career to the present day.
Well, that I'm sure everyone agree that is a fascinating career. Obviously, it's taken you into lots of different commodities over a long time span. So I guess a question for me would be power trading. Obviously, that's what you're into, focusing on today. Is there any synergies that you see in today's power trading market in Japan compared to any of the other commodities, the rare metals, the base metals that you've focused on earlier in your career?
Sure. Like I said earlier, Japan has been liberalizing the commodities market gradually. And it started in the early 80s, started in the gold market. And then when the market was liberalized, deregulated, the futures exchange evolved. So in the case of gold trading, 1982 was the year that Tokyo Commodity Exchange listed the gold futures contracts. And in the 90s, petroleum market has been liberalized and deregulated. And Tokyo Commodity Exchange also listed gasoline, kerosene, and also crude oil futures contracts. So this gave me the experience of the process of a commodities deregulated, and the commodity futures market is born and is developing. So I have gone through those process in the metals and also in the oil and oil products in the past. So I think this also applies to the the power market, which the liberalization started in the late 90s and completed in 2016. So we are seeing at the moment in the power market is exactly what we have seen in the petroleum market in the 90s and also in the precious metals market in the 80s. So there is a lot of similarities in the process of commoditization of the products.
You're very well placed to talk about to customers that are entering the market, what could potentially be coming.
Exactly. I have seen that and I have experienced that and I have traded that. So I know the entire process. So I think that gives me the advantage of doing what I'm doing in the power market for the EEX. Yeah. So that's one of the strengths that I have in this market at the moment.
And before we go on to your role currently in the power market in Japan, it'd be really fascinating to just get an insight, or if you could share any insights for traders, like someone like you who's been in commodity trading for 40 years. Like what would you say are key lessons that you've learned and key takeaways for you if you were to pass that on to a new trader?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Being a good trader, you need to be humble all the time because the market is big and you cannot be bigger than the market that you are trading. So you have to be humble. That's the number one thing I would like to mention. And this gives me another, the point I'd like to mention, which is in trading any market, there is a volatility in the price, right? Whether it is gold or petroleum or power. And I always say, you give away the top and you give away the bottom. You cannot buy the bottom. You cannot sell at the top. So be humble. And also the last thing I would like to say is there is always a way behind that everybody is working. I would like to quote the Japanese saying. We have a very interesting saying in Japan. Let me see. Off the beaten path lies a mountain in bloom. So if you are walking the same way that others are walking, there is not much things that you can gain from that. There's always a path behind it. So that's another thing that I always keep it in mind when I was trading commodities in the past.
Yeah, that's a great saying. I love that. Is that where curiosity is a good trait for a trader, trying to find that new path?
Oh, exactly. You have to make effort every day. You have to learn what's happening in the market. So you have to be curious of what's going on in not only the commodity that you are trading, you have to be curious about what's happening in the equity market, have to be very curious about foreign exchange market, fixed income market, or global, international politics and stuff. So you have to be curious about everything. Otherwise, you cannot find the way that you should go.
This podcast is brought to you today by Nimble Alpha, who provides systematic market insights and are trusted daily by some of the highest performing power and gas traders at tier one energy trading houses. Nimble Alpha delivers clear, data-driven signals across TTF, MBP, EUAs, German Power, Brent, and Henry Hub. They allow you to anticipate short-term trends, time executions, so you can stay ahead of volatility. So whether you trade spec, handle client flow, or manage risk, Nimble Alpha allows you to make sharper decisions with full transparency. In today's quant-driven markets, it's the perfect overlay of your fundamental research. So book your free trial today in the link below and get 10% off your first subscription. Stay nimble. Amazing. Great advice there. Thanks for that, Bob. Well, let's talk about your role today. And obviously, what you said you joined, was it in 2020? You joined to head up
Yes, I ended my last assignment in Washington, D.C. in June of 2020. I returned back to Tokyo. But 1 month prior to that, in May of 2020, European Energy Exchange launched the clearing service of the Japan Power. And that was right in the middle of the corona pandemic. So I really have a great respect for the management of the company to bravely decide to go on the launch of the new product in Japan. And I joined the EEX Tokyo office in July of 2020. After that, like this slide is showing, very severe power crunch in the early part of 2021, caused by the unexpected cold snap with LNG shortage. And Ukrainian war happened in February 2022, and there was a European gas crisis, as everybody knows. And in the following year, 23 June, we launched the daily and weekend futures contracts. And in the same months, we extended the maturity of the monthly contract from 6 to 9 months. And May last year, we established the EEX Japan KK. KK is like a limited company in the Japanese law. And in November, we extended the maturities of the seasonal contract from 2 to 4 years. And come this year, in February, we launched the monthly average price options contracts, which is a very, very new product for the Japanese power trading community. And in April, we launched the central limit order book, which is screen trading for the first time in the EEX Japan Power. So going forward, we plan to launch a fiscal year futures contract in October. And also we plan to launch a Chubu area in Q4, in addition to the currently available token Takai. So here we go. That's the very quick overview of my last 5 years.
Well, you've been very busy, Bob, the last 5 years, and especially in the past year, I can see with a lot of new products and services launched.
Yes, I was pretty busy in the beginning of this year because, we did options, which is completely new to the market. And also we launched the screen trading, which is new to us. Not so much in Europe, because my colleagues in the European offices, they already have the screen trading for many years. But in Japan, it's a new thing. So pretty tied up for the beginning of this year.
Yeah. And you must have been inundated with interested parties to join the market, because I myself know that I said at the start, it's probably the hottest power market in the world, just because all of the clients that I work with, all the trading houses that I talk to, Japan is, if they're not already made the move, it's very high up on their agenda to participate into the market. You must be a very busy person right now speaking to new participants.
Well, Patrick, this is a very nascent market. Is that correcting?
Yeah.
It's an immature market, in other words. And basically what's happening in Japan is what has already happened in Europe. 15, 20 years ago. So from the viewpoint of the power traders in Europe, this is like a deja vu, right? This is like back to the future, so to speak. So, of course, there is difference between Japan and Europe in terms of market fundamentals. Japan being an island country, we don't have the natural gas pipeline and we don't have the nuclear power plants, just like you have a lot in France. So there's a difference in those demand and supply fundamentals, but we are basically following the footsteps of what the European the people have done in the past 20 years.
Yeah. So it makes sense why there's so much interest from like the European trading houses to want to come in and I guess share their knowledge and utilize their experience of what's come previously in Europe.
Exactly.
So what does this mean if we're having obviously more top participants? I guess this has been big spike in trading volumes in the last few years, I could imagine.
Yeah, this is a quarterly traded volume of the EEX Japan Power since its inception of 5 years ago. And as you can see, the volume increased from 2022 to 2023, almost triple, right?
Yeah.
And from 23 to 24, it's quadrupled. And from 24 to this year, it's only first half of this year, it's doubled. So it's been like threefold, fourfold, and twofold. So I think as a nascent market like Japan, we've done pretty well. Don't you think?
Well, yeah, that growth is pretty spectacular. Yeah. To see it in graph form. Yeah. It really does show. I think we've probably touched on it earlier, but why do you think there is so much interest in the last year? Do you expect this growth to keep continuing, this double-digit growth?
Yeah, sure. This slide can explain what's behind the growth. This is how the market has performed in the past 5 years. This is JPX, which is a spot power exchange in Japan. Day ahead price movement. As you can see, it's volatile, very, very volatile, especially in January 21. The price of the day ahead price jumped from 10 yen to as high as 150 yen. So, due to, like I said, shortage of LNG and the cold snap, which hit Japan and South Korea and China all at the same time, and we are using same generation fuel, which is LNG. And then in 22, we had the Ukrainian war and the gas crisis in Europe. In the 23, we had the Gaza war, and then 24, we had the heat wave and typhoons hitting Japan. And again, heat wave and typhoon is hitting Japan this year as well. So what I want to say here is the market has been so volatile. The Japanese power market hasn't experienced this kind of volatility up until 2020. So this is the first time for the Japanese power people who have witnessed the volatility.
Oh, really? So prior to this, it was quite flat?
It was quite flat, very, very flat, and also flat in the lower side, like 10 yen or even less than 10 yen because of, solars and winds, renewables coming in. And we didn't have volatility in the LNG market as well. So the power market, the spot market has been very stable, has been quite cheap for a long time. And all of a sudden in 2020, things started to change. And to me, this volatility incentivized the power companies in this country to start seriously thinking about managing price risk using the derivatives instruments. So that's the biggest reason behind the growth in the Japanese power futures market.
Interesting. And do you expect the volatility to stay in the upcoming years?
Well, we have to ask what's going to happen to the gas market, which means, TTF gas, the European gas, and the European gas price impacts the JKM, which is Japan-Korea market, the spot LNG market available in East Asia. So there is a strong correlation between the two gas markets, TTF and JKM. And the Japanese power market is highly correlated to JKM, right? So this means if something happens in Europe, and similar thing is going to happen in Japan. And we have never ever seen this before. This only started in 2022 because of what happened in the European gas market. The Russian pipeline gas has been suspended, and the European power companies must buy LNG from spot LNG market. So this interesting development in the gas dynamics is giving the Japanese power market interesting new dynamics in the Japanese market.
Yeah. See, I'm not an expert at all, obviously, in power trading. I just talk to the experts. But I find that fascinating because I never would have assumed how closely correlated the European markets, power and gas, would be to Japan. As you say, that's a recent phenomenon.
Yeah, well, Japan is heavily dependent upon the LNG supply in terms of generation fuel.
Yeah.
At the moment, 30 to 40% of the power is using the LNG. And Japan is an island country, so there is no pipeline. So you have to plan ahead the quantity of the LNG you buy, and also where you're going to buy the LNG from, America or from Middle East, or from Australia. So this complexity of the logistics of the most important generation fuel, LNG, is giving Japanese power market another dimension of the complexity. And also on top of that, we have lots of renewables coming in, just like in Europe. Yeah, we have so many solar powers, and not so much wind, but lots of solar powers. For example, we have a heat wave, lots of sunshine. And then the day like today, we have plenty of solar power. So the power price goes down when the sun is shining. But as soon as the sun sets, and then the power price started to go up. So naturally, the renewable entry to the Japanese power mix is giving the price a lot more volatility.
Yeah. So I guess that's another reason why the European traders are so interested in Japan, because if they are experts in trading TTF and German power, if there's a strong correlation with Japan, and then they believe they can probably help the market in Japan just as well as they can in Europe.
Absolutely, Patrick. You hit the nail on the head. You know, somebody who knows the fundamentals of the natural gas market in Europe can have an upper hand in forecasting, what's going to happen to the spot LNG market in Asia. And then eventually it gives impact to the Japanese power futures price. And also in Europe, there are many power trading houses who are very good at trading the renewable energy, the solars and winds, and very short-term spot trading of the power.
Yes.
There are so many, insightful traders, good traders in Europe. Again, this kind of know-how and experience can be very useful when it comes to Japanese renewable markets.
Yeah, no, more synergies than I thought of. But how can they be useful? As someone who's obviously responsible for the exchange, EEX in Japan, how can these participants be useful to the market?
Oh, absolutely. In order for the market to be active, you need to have hedgers, right? The hedgers like Japanese power generator, Japanese power retailer, wholesaler, the trading houses. And these guys who are handling the physical power are the natural hedgers. They don't like the price volatility, right? So they'd like to hedge their exposure in the market. They want to hedge the exposure in the market. There must be risk takers who are also in the market. And those risk takers are not usually Japanese players, because Japanese players are hedgers. They are risk averse. But the international trading companies in Europe, in America, in Australia, in Singapore, those international trading companies are the risk takers. They know how to trade the market. So what has been happening in EEX Japan Power in the 5 years, the growth of the volume that you have seen is actually happening because of this good balance of the hedgers and also risk takers from abroad. This slide is showing how the market participants in EEX Japan Power has grown in the past 5 years. We started from only 3 in May of 2020, and right now we have 107. So the number of the trading market participant has grown by 35 times in 5 years.
Wow.
And this is a breakdown of our market participants as of July this year. As you can see, we have a very well-balanced customer portfolio. The Japanese players are 53 companies, and the international players are 54 companies. And let's just say in the Japanese case, we have 29 power retailers, and 13 power and gas producers, and 7 financials, and 4 major trading houses. And basically, those guys are the physical players. So they are natural hedgers, right?
Yeah.
And on the international side, we have power trading companies, 23, and 17 financial companies, and 11 commodity trading companies, and 3 oil majors. And basically, these international players are very experienced, has got a lot of know-how how to manage the price risk. So these guys are playing the role of the risk takers. So hedgers from Japan and risk takers from international community, the combination between the two makes the liquidity.
Yeah. So like you say, that's like a near perfect balance. So is that a coincidence, or is that been done like on purpose so far?
Well, it's coincidence, to be honest. I cannot control the number of the Japanese players and international players to coming into this market. It just so happened. So maybe as more and more Japanese companies enter the market as hedgers, and then more and more international risk takers are coming in. So to me, keeping this balance is a quite important part of keeping the liquidity growing.
Yeah. So it keeps it healthy.
Yes.
Do you expect it to continue to be such a perfect match in the next year?
I would say it's not going like to be for the next 5 years, I would say. Maybe in Japan, we have 700 power retailers, licensed power retailers in this country.
Okay.
And only 30 or 29 companies trading the EEX Japan power at the moment. So we have so many power retailers who are not trading derivatives at all. So there is a big potential for the power retailers. Small company, medium-sized companies, those guys to start trading the derivatives in the future.
Yeah,
I can see a great potential for the Japanese power retailers joining our market in the future.
Yeah, we're still so early.
We are still so early. If you compare that with the European counterpart.
Absolutely. I think you mentioned there's a slide that shows that really well.
Yeah, sure. This slide is actually showing the nationalities of the international companies.
Yeah, this is a good slide. Quite a few of these are my clients, I think.
Okay.
Without naming names.
Yeah, those nationalities we took from parent company nationality, right? Some of those companies have offices in Singapore and trading out of Singapore, but we took the nationalities of a parent company of those companies. At the moment, 15 different nationalities: US, Denmark, UK, France, Australia, Germany, Switzerland. So more diverse the nationalities of the players, and then more liquidity will be generated. So each of these companies, they have their own trading know-how, so to speak. For example, the Danish companies, they are very good at trading the very short term, compared with the big US investment banks who are very good at trading in the long term, 2 years and 3 years. So big risk takers. So the mixture of those different types of traders is quite important to keep the liquidity going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's like you say, it's so international. And I know some of the Danish houses very well. And like you say, they're very good at intraday and short term. So they can bring that experience to Japan. I was surprising to see Germany. I would have expected more players from Germany, actually. But I'm sure that will grow too, as well.
Yeah, maybe so. But German companies, generally speaking, very active. If you just compare the number, they're just 4. But if you think about the quantity they trade, these German companies trade bigger than the other companies.
Yeah. So in terms of quantities, are there like 3 or 4 companies that are trading the highest number of quantity by some margin, or is it quite mixed at the moment?
It's quite mixed. I would say 90% of the volume is traded by the top 20 players at the moment.
Yeah.
And also ranking of these top 20 trading companies always changing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
2 years ago, ranking is completely different from what we are seeing at the moment. And last year is different from this year. So it's always, changing, not only in the international companies, but also in the Japanese companies as well.
I imagine, yeah, like you said, given all the new entrants that are coming as well, that'll continue to change.
Yeah.
But moving on to this is the slide I think you mentioned earlier, which I find really, really interesting, comparative to Europe, which I think shows the. Yeah. So do you mind explaining this one?
Yeah, of course. For example, in 2024, last year, the entire European power market traded 8,438 terawatt hours. And the entire European power consumption is about 2,600. If you compare that with Japan traded 73 in the futures market. But the size of the Japanese physical power consumption is 870. Which is 1/3 of the entire Europe. And this gives you the picture that power derivatives in Japan has a big room to grow. If you just compare the size of the physical power market between Japan and Europe. So Japan is very much immature in terms of the size of the derivatives market.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty startling when you see it like that. 1% of the whole European volume, but the market is 1/3 of the size. So there's, huge exponential growth possibilities. So look, it's great to see, Bob, like how many international participants from the US and Europe. And what a trend that I'm seeing with my European clients is a lot of them setting up physical offices in Singapore, but also in Tokyo as well, in Japan. And a few have commented, the people that have gone into Tokyo, that there's real benefits for being on the ground there. So what I'd like to discuss here is, obviously we talked about fundamentally the markets are correlated between Europe and Japan, but what are the big differences in like business culture? Because I've heard this before, so it'd be great to hear from yourself there.
Yeah, sure. When the European people, well, for that matter, American people as well, English-speaking people, when they talk about Asia, they kind of imagine Singapore. Asia is Singapore. But to me, Singapore is not 100% Asia because they speak English and their social system and the legal system has been imported from Great Britain. So to me, the people there look like Asians, but they behave like Europeans, speaking English as a language, right?
Yeah.
But Japan is a totally Asian country. If you come to Tokyo, you will be very surprised to find not so many people speak English. Most of the information is available in Japanese, and then communication is not easy. Of course, there are people who can understand English, so you can communicate, but basically there is a very, very high language barrier in Japan. So that's the biggest difference between setting up the office in Singapore and having the office in Japan. But you can trade the Japan power out of Singapore. You can trade the derivatives market out of Singapore because we are in the same time zone. It's only 1 hour difference. So you can trade Japan power from Singapore, and there are many players who are trading Japan power from Singapore. But if you want to trade the physical power, you have to be in Japan. And then you have to overcome this language barrier and cultural barrier and all sorts of barriers that English-speaking people will face doing business here in Japan. But if you are able to trade the physical market, you can have different types of information you can get from the physical market. And also, there must be some arbitrage opportunity between the physical market and the futures market, trading the spot market at the JPX and trading OTC physical market with the Japanese counterparts. So you can have different tools in trading around your book. You have the futures exchange, which is EEX Japan Power, and you have the JPX spot market, and you have an OTC physical trading market. So being able to trade the physical power is going to give you a different edge in trading your Japanese power book. So that's the first thing I have to say. But being in Japan, you need to talk to the Japanese people. Like I said, there are people who understand English. So you can have a conversation with the Japanese counterparts, but their behavior is different from Europeans. Let me just give you an example. We go out in the evening for business communication, and that's very normal in Japan.
Yeah.
But when I was living in London, when I was living in Washington, D.C., the people there normally go home in the evening because they would like to have the time with the family.
Yeah.
And if you go out every evening, your wife is an unhappy wife. And you don't want to have the unhappy wife, having dinner by herself at home, right?
My wife would certainly be unhappy, for sure.
But in Japan, it's very common. Yeah, you go out in the evening, have drinks and have dinner with your clients. You exchange views and get information. This week, I went out last night with my clients. Dinner finished at 9:30, returned home at 10:30.
So it's a long day.
It's a long day,
Yeah.
but if you'd like to do a business in Japan, you have to accept it. Sometimes your day can be very long because evening's time is used for the communication with the clients.
So it's all about trust and building relationships and long-term relationships. It's not transactional.
Exactly. Because, most of the Japanese companies have a lifetime employment system, which is different from Europeans and Americans. Once you are employed, once you are hired by Japanese companies, you tend to stay for 30 years and 40 years. In my case, I stayed in one company for 40 years. And that rarely happens in Europe.
It used to happen, but a couple of maybe like my dad's generation, he worked for a company for 30 years, but you don't see that anymore.
Exactly.
In Europe.
Yeah, I agree. I think this kind of generational thing is definitely happening in Japan. Nowadays, the young people tend to leave the company at the early stage to join another company. But generally speaking, people tend to stay in the same company. And this means your relationship has to be long-term.
Yeah.
Because you are working in the same company for a long term, and you get to know him or you get to know her, and then the relationship also gets longer and longer. So this long-term relationship and trust and communication in the evening time. So these are the things that you have to accept when you are doing business in Japan. But if you do so, you can get all sorts of benefits. Useful information in the physical trading, or maybe you will be accepted by the Japanese society, even though you look like non-Japanese and you speak English. But if you continue to do so, it's easy for you to get accepted in the community. So these sort of things are typical for the Japanese business community. And also, there's one thing that I have to say. There is a conservatism in regulatory space. The Japanese regulator, in the case of Japanese power market, it's called METI, Ministry of Economy and Trade and Industry, METI. And they are the people who are regulating this market. They are the very conservative people, but they are the people who initiate the energy policy for the longer term. So they have the power to come up with long-term energy plan for Japan. So you need to understand their mentality, how they want the energy market in Japan to be going forward. And in order to do so, you have to meet with them and you have to read all the information that METI makes public. But unfortunately, most of the information is in Japanese language and it's quite long. So you need patience to understand what the regulator is thinking about. And also, there is a conservatism on the part of regulatory people about the financial markets, right? Financial derivatives, options and futures and swaps, things like this. And also, there is conservatism that I can witness for them for the financial players, the banks and hedge funds and prop traders. In other words, Japanese regulator want to have the market basically as much as Japanese company and Japanese people, not so much, the companies from outside. It's changing all the time, of course, but as far as I can see, there is a general tendency towards this kind of conservative attitude that I can see in the Japanese society.
Well, that's fascinating. I'm sure going to be really insightful for people who are thinking about Japan, because I guess the people who listen that are already participating in the market or already in the process are aware of these things. But I think that is going to be very different to what it is in Europe, because it's quite easy if you're trading Germany to go and trade France and trade Netherlands, the other local countries, and even, to go into the US. You don't have that on the ground long-term plan. It can be done in 3 to 6 months. Entering these markets. Obviously, there's some challenges, but what you're telling me here is a speculator cannot easily look at Japan opportunistically in the physical market and say, hey, I want to test this market and see how I do. It's more of a long-term commitment. It's like I can see myself or the company being in Japan for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and making that commitment in the front end to make it happen. It's not an easy process. It's going to take, you tell me, how long can it take, that process of getting going from first time you visit someone in Japan to going live?
Exactly. Well, Patrick, it's not a sprint. This is a
Yeah.
marathon.
Yeah.
So you have to be patient. And the
Yeah.
Japanese companies, Japanese regulator, they respect long-term approach. So somebody coming from abroad, setting up shop in Tokyo, trying to make easy money for 2 years and 3 years,
Yeah.
they don't like it. If you are in Japan, stay here longer term and try to be part of the community. Even though you don't speak language, but make your effort to be part of the community, talking to the regulator, talking to the clients. So this sort of attitude, patience, perseverance is a necessary attribute in order to be successful in Japan.
That's really interesting, because it's kind of advice that I give new entrants into Europe who've never done power before, because power trading as a whole is a very exciting and a very interesting commodity for a lot of trading houses that have never traded power before. And a lot of them are, in my view, coming for opportunistic 1 year, 2 year windows. And this is what I have to, when I meet a client for the first time, I have to tell them, look, this is not a short term. It's not going to be easy to just make money straight away in like 3 months. It's not like other markets like crypto or perhaps, equities. This is more of a long-term commitment, and you have to really buy into the power trading as a whole. So I think that is for Europe, but this sounds like for Japan, it's even more so.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. So I think I've got a few clients that are in Japan, and I told them that I was doing a podcast with yourself, Bob, and they had a couple of questions specifically on some of the new products. So options, obviously it's very new. Could you tell us a little bit about the options market, where it is today, what your view is moving forwards?
Yeah, options is a very new product as far as Japan Power is concerned. We only launched it in February. So 5 months, 6 months since we have launched. And we have already traded 1.2 terawatt hours. And I think we had something like 60 transactions already in the options the market. The unique part of the EEX Japan Power option is the average price option. It's the Asian style option.
Okay.
So we take the average of the JPX day ahead price, and then we settle the difference between the strike price you set in the beginning. So it's a very unique specification of the options product here in Japan. The reason why we do this is we are targeting the Japanese retail sector. The Japanese retail sector is selling their products to the physical end users based upon the average price of a JPX. So what they worry about is they worry about the sudden spike in the spot price. So what they have to buy in order to protect any spike in the price of the JPX price is they would like to buy the call option. They would like to buy the cap. Just in case the power, spot price spikes. And like I said, there is a big number of Japanese power retailers in this market, and they are selling their physical power based upon the average price of JPX. So we see there is a big potential for the average price option to grow further. And, we have just done 5 months and 6 months, and So still in the very early stage of the development of this particular product. And we are very optimistic about this market is going to get more traction in the future.
Yeah. But you're it's so very new, as you say, but you're seeing interest so far, and you expect it to grow significantly in the next year or two.
I hope so, but it doesn't happen naturally. You have to make effort. And one of the efforts that we have in mind is to educate the Japanese power retailers. And in order to educate the power retailers, you can do it individually. But since we have so many audience in this retail sector, what we have in mind is we are now in the process of creating a YouTube video, which is a tutorial video targeting the Japanese power retail sector. So we talk about what the derivatives are, we talk about the risk management, and then we talk about the options. We talk about how to utilize to limit the risk exposure by using derivative instruments. So education is very, very important in order for this market to grow further.
Yeah. And I guess that's going back to like US markets or European markets. Derivatives are just like part of everyday work, and these products have been there for a long time. But as you say, there's an education piece because it's so new for Japanese retailers. They've not seen it before, so they need to. I guess there's a bit of skepticism or just a bit of unawareness of it.
Exactly. Well, if you go to equity market, if you go to FX market, these guys know what derivatives are. These guys know what the options are, swaps are, whatever.
Yeah.
But the power market is only liberalized 8 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So has a very short history so far. So we need more education to get the conservative players to be involved in the derivatives market going forward.
Yeah. And also another new product is the order book introduction. So how's that been received so far? I know it's very new. It's only April.
It's only April. Yeah, it's very, very new. And it's taking time. But gradually, slowly increasing the usage of the order book. I think at this moment, it's about 2% of the total volume. The transactions which go through our order book is about 2%. But, if you go to Germany, it's 50% of the total volume. So again, we have a long way to go to catch up with the European counterpart.
Yeah, for sure. And how do you view the 2026 futures trading activity? Because someone mentioned to me that there's some deals expiring. Could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. There's a PPA, the long-term PPA, which have been signed some 10 years ago between JERA, which is the largest power producer in Japan, and a company called TEPCO EP. TEPCO is Tokyo Electric Power, TEPCO EP, which is a retail arm of TEPCO, and also Chubu Miraizu, which is also a retail arm of Chubu Electric, another big producer of power. So JERA, the big seller, and these two companies, TEPCO and Chubu, are the big buyers. And this long-term contract is going to expire at the end of March next year, right?
Okay.
So as far as FY26, which starting from April next year, there is no contract available. So these guys must go to the market and buy. I mean, the buyers have to go to the market and buy. The sellers must go to the market and sell. So this is what's going on at the moment. And I think this transaction is going to stay until the maturity of a long-term contract. So as I have shown you the growth of the volume in the past, so this year's volume has grown like twice as big as last year. And to some extent, I think the hedging from this kind of physical flow is coming into the futures market, which is pushing up the volume of the futures, the trading as well. So this big contract maturity looming in March next year is a big factor for the trade flow in both physical and also in the futures to grow further for the rest of this fiscal year.
Yeah, interesting. Something that I've seen in the European market is a big increase in algorithmic trading. In the short term especially, that's grew exponentially. And also we're seeing it in futures as well. And some algo trading experts joining the market to participate. So I'm interested to touch on algo trading in Japanese power, especially because you mentioned obviously the TSOs are a little bit more conservative. So interested to just get your views on algorithmic trading and the role that could play.
Yeah, that's another good point about the the conservatism that I discussed earlier. So I talked about the conservatism towards financial players and conservatism towards options and futures, derivatives in general. And there is a conservatism or even resistance, so to speak, about the algorithmic trading as well. We don't see that at the moment in the power space. I think it will come sometime in the future. But in order for that to happen, I think we need to have much more robust trading system in the spot market, which is JEPX, because many of those, the algos are getting into the spot market rather than the futures market, right? So I think the system has to be improved in order to cope with large quantities of orders from the algo traders. That's number one. But I would say at this moment, we are not ready yet. Because like I said, Japanese power market is still at the very emerging stage. And like I said, our order book screen trading only being introduced in April this year.
Yeah.
So it takes time. But like I said, what happened in Europe is going to happen in Japan. So it will happen. And we have to be prepared.
Yeah, just a bit too early, like you say, because the trading volumes, the orders, daily orders are not at the same levels, that
But
they would start to
Patrick, let me mention, if you go to Osaka Exchange, which lists Nikkei 225 futures products, there are so many algos. So many algos are trading Nikkei 225. So it's very common in the financial instruments. It's just that it's not common yet in the commodity space. But I am sure these guys are interested in a volatile market, right? So I'm sure the same people who are trading the Nikkei 225 is definitely will show the interest in moving into the commodity space, including the power market.
Yeah. Well, do you think that if someone who wants to get into physical power as an algo trader today, do you think they will be met with skepticism from the TSO?
It's a very difficult question for me to answer because I am not dealing with the TSO people and I'm not dealing with the JEPX myself. But as a general comment that I can make, there must be some negativity about algos, many algos, hitting the market. The people, people are usually, very scared about the influx of lots of algos. But that's my general view.
Yeah. I've just seen the trend, especially with renewables, like because the daily volatility of renewables is so high, and especially in Europe, algos has just basically now become the main way of trading, the intraday market. So yeah, I know there's interest in taking that approach to Japan, but how easy it is to actually get it in today, that's a different question, like you say. Bob, just final thought, because we've covered a lot here and it's been fascinating, genuinely. Just on how you feel about the future in Japanese power markets, and is there any key insights and takeaways that you would mention next 2 years?
You see, Japanese physical power consumption is about 900 terawatt hours.
Yeah.
It's number 5 in the global ranking. So we are one of the biggest power consumers in the world. And the most recent METI report on the energy plan going forward, showing this power demand currently 900 is likely to grow to 1100 by 2040. due to data center demand, AIs,
AI.
and semiconductor, manufacturing, all sorts of new type of demand that we haven't had in the past. So the consumption is going to grow. But at the moment, the supply is not enough. Maybe you might know that back in 2011, we had a very unfortunate disaster in one of the nuclear power plants in Fukushima Prefecture, caused by the earthquake and tsunami. And still, we have many 20 or 25 nuclear reactors offline. They're not working. Right. And also there is strong resistance on the part of Japanese people about the risk which is involved in nuclear power plants. So the demand is rising, but the nuclear power plants is not easy to restart. And there is a strong resistance about fossil fuels. So you cannot generate the power from coal and natural gas and oil. So this complexity in dynamics between the demand and supply in the power market is going to give the market a lot of challenge. Yeah. So I think, and also on top of that, we have a growing number of renewable energy coming in.
Yes.
So I think Japanese power market is going to be an interesting market to watch. Yeah. Lots of parameters, so to speak, and lots of complexities and lots of difficulties facing energy policy in Japan. So I'm sure this can be a very interesting market for the power traders in both physical and also in the futures market to trade.
Yeah, no, I think it's similar dynamics to what we're seeing like in Germany, like obviously nuclear not being a big driver of energy anymore and renewables being heavily invested. But at the same time, AI has just appeared in the last 2 years and it's going to, for the first time in a while, send power demand through the roof. And then the questions remain, okay, well, how are we going to meet the demands and remain competitive in the global AI race? Obviously, I was speaking to people on the podcast in the US, and the whole dynamics of how power is now created in the US has changed since obviously Trump got back in, and we just want energy as quickly and as cheaply as possible, and it doesn't really matter as much where it comes from. And then Europe, obviously, they're a little bit more hesitant about fossil fuels and nuclear, but can renewables meet the demands that AI is going to have if you want to be competitive? So is it similar kind of challenges and conversations you're having in Japan at the moment?
Exactly. And all these things lead us to the market volatility, right?
Yeah.
So price of power is not going to stay low at 10 yen or 15 yen. It's going to be like this in both day-ahead market. At the moment, the Japanese spot market doesn't allow the negative price. But in Europe, look at Europe, there are many, many negative prices.
In Germany, especially, yeah.
Yeah, because of too many, solars and too many winds. And, this is going to happen in Japan as well. Even though, the METI is not allowing the negative price in the spot power market, but it will happen in a few years' time. And also unforeseeability of the gas market in natural gas in Europe and also JKN market in Asian market. All sorts of things is going to create the volatility in the futures space as well. So lots of volatility in the spot market, lots of volatility in the futures market. And what do we need? We need derivatives market. We need derivatives instruments to hedge against unexpected price risk. So I think we have just one way for this market to grow in the future.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. And it makes sense to me why, there's so much interest in the Japanese market. But Bob, look, I think we've covered so many topics, interesting topics. It's been very educational for me. It's been very insightful. I'm sure that the audience will agree as well. So, I've loved that conversation. So thanks a lot for your time, Bob. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And If you have any questions or if your customers have any questions, please do feel free to contact me.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be, Bob. I'm sure there'll be plenty of interest following this if there wasn't already. Awesome. Thanks again.